Well, welcome to another episode of the Godcast. My guests this week on the Godcast are Clive Lawrence, who's from Burnley, who is a very well-known photographer, and his colleague Matt Libri, who is involved with a group called Lower Block, and we're going to be talking about a project that they've both been involved with. So, guys, it's great to get you on the Godcast. How are you both?
Good morning. Very well, thank you, Alex.
Very
Yeah,
well, thanks.
Clive, you're in Burnley. Where Burnley area? Where are you, Matt?
I'm down on the Kent coast in Folkestone.
Oh, quite a way away. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, interesting connections. Of people are perhaps thinking, what's Matt in Folkestone got to do with Clive in Burnley? So let's unpack that a bit. Clive, you are a photographer of many years. Just quickly tell us a bit about your way into photography all those years ago.
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in photography. I went to Barden High School in Burnley, and it was my brother who came to me one day and said, "I've had a word with the one of the PE teachers, and he's going to show us how to make photographs." So we went in together, and Nigel said to me, "I can't afford to buy this kit on my own. How do you fancy going halves with me?" So we split the price of a dark room. We made a dark room at home. Both got a camera. Nigel did about 3 weeks and give up. But I was hooked from the first time I saw a photograph appear in a tray, and I started taking pictures from that point. I used to do pictures of the school football team when they went to the Keithley Cup final at Turf Moor. But when I came up to leaving school, I went and I couldn't follow that sort of career at that point, so I ended up working in Marks and Spencers in Burnley. But I always had an interest, and when I was about 18, 19, I ended up going back to Nelson and Combe College and doing it part-time, doing it in the afternoon and doing it in the evening. And that's really when I decided I wanted to be a sports photographer, and started going down. And if you're going to be a sports photographer in Burnley, there's only one place really you can go, and that's Turf Moor, and that's where I found myself in about 1988.
Yeah, which leads us to this project that we're going to talk about. Just in your words, Clive, tell us a bit about the project, what it's named, and how it came about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I go back to 1988, I wanted to be a sports photographer, but for whatever reason, from the first game I went on, I always took an odd couple of pictures of the people that were going to the games. I took pictures of all different ages, and there was a lot going on around the club at that time. It wasn't, we were in the fourth division. The team on the field was struggling at times. The crowds were not that big. And there was a bit of frustration that was sort of bubbling up at times with the sort of demonstrations after the game. And I kind of got caught up, and I took a lot of them, just took a lot of them pictures, and for a long time I sat on them. They never really went anywhere. But I have posted a few over the years on social media. And back in the summer, I posted a couple, and I tagged Lower Block in because I'd sort of come across them on Instagram, and I really liked the way that they sort of promoted football culture, and it wasn't just about what was going on the field. And I was very surprised when they got in touch and wanted to sort of maybe put out one of their editions with the Burnley pictures.
Yeah, Matt, that's probably a good time to bring you in and say low block. People might not be familiar with it. Just over to you. Tell us a bit about your role and low block itself.
Yeah, no. So I am lower block, and my background, Alex, is I used to work in newspapers as a national newspaper picture editor across both sort of print and digital. Not working in sport, and I'm not a photographer, but across sort of news, showbiz, politics. I love photography, and I love kind of like seeing things printed out. Great magazines, newspapers, obviously, and things like that. I started Lower Block as a kind of a passion project, I suppose, that was sort of bringing together this kind of professional background I had, working with photographers, and combining it with this sort of thing that I feel like I'm kind of most authentically aligned with, which is this kind of world of football culture. I've always been a football fan. I played football, obviously, growing up. Very kind of traditional, I suppose, in this country, in a sense that it's a very massive connection between me and my dad, my brother. sort of other friends and sort of family members and things like that. And quite simplistically, I think looking at, sort of the world of football culture through photography, a lot of people perhaps don't necessarily realize or don't instantly recognize like how sort of rich football is with culture. And you've got everything from sort of style and design within the game to kind of those aspects of community and society. And in a very sort of, I love how kind of photography is able to, it's just a great format to document everything that's going on. And so I kind of started, and I'm working with different photographers, kind of creating these sort of photo zines, which I call kind of like these lower block editions. Not just British football culture, there's a bit of Europe in there and South America and stuff like that. But together they kind of just sort of form a kind of curated series of how football culture exists in the world, as it is now, but also as it was, as in the case with the Burnley edition, sort of 30 odd years ago. And it's still quite a small project. It wasn't by design to sort of be like this kind of mass, kind of commercially driven sort of enterprise. It's supposed to sort of reflect the things I think a lot of us love about football, which is that it's, it's not, it's a tight curation. There's sort of £8.50 to buy. It's supposed to be accessible. I'm not trying to use La Block to peddle kind of any sort of hidden messaging or anything like that. It's quite simple. It's like, this is what football is and this is what it means to people, and have a look at these lovely pictures.
Yeah. I think it's very nostalgic, and actually, I think it's really important. I was just a few weeks ago, Nottingham Forest played Malmo, which was a recreation of the European Cup final
Yeah.
from, was it 79 possibly? And I was looking back at, there was a picture present day of all the legends of that time, John Robertson and Tony Woodcock, and I was looking back at it was absolutely fascinating to see. And what was the attraction of Clive's project, Matt? Was it the quality of the photographs? Was it the storytelling to go with it?
Yeah. It's kind of like, I suppose Clive's project is the perfect storm in many ways of, you've got a proper a proper photographer, great photographer who has a fantastic sort of archive of images, but kind of importantly, the story of Burnley. I mean, we're obviously, Burnley are currently in the Premier League. These pictures were telling a story, from a time, sort of, long before that, and sort of kind of almost a far cry from where the club is right now. But they're still playing at Turf Moor. I think it's a real, I've sort of said this sort of thing before, but as a kind of I suppose, a community club, it's quite, you would look at, I would look at a project and think, well, Burnley, there's going to be a really like kind of clear, clean target audience you can hit with that. Whereas sometimes you can do some other clubs, like a Barcelona or Man United, and it's like it's quite hard to reach their sort of their core fan base. So it kind of, as soon as I saw Clive's pictures, and I spoke with Clive, and we talked a little bit about what the sort of like the narrative might be, and it was like, yeah, and it's an absolute no-brainer for me to sort of take that on and go, and and privileged to put it together, really.
Mm. Clive, I interviewed Jamie Hoyland, who you will know from Burnley, who played some years ago, and he was around that time, maybe a little bit later. But he talked about Burnley as it was, and he talked specifically about Gawthorpe being this rundown training ground. And he said, you know what? It were cold and it were wet and it were damp. He said, and it were mouldy. He said, but it were our mould. Um, I'm just wondering if you managed to capture that, Clive, in some of your photographs, because I think what Matt says, Burnley is quite neat, unique, isn't it? It's at the heart of its community. Everybody wears the Burnley shirts. Nobody wears Man U and Liverpool shirt. Very, very special. It's the heartbeat of the town, but it has changed a lot. And I'm just wondering what some of your pictures revealed to you, and maybe to people who might look at them.
I think when I look back at them pictures of the terraces, the concrete terraces, and how stark and cold and neglected they are in many ways, they do look very raw and they do look very gritty, but yet there was a real warmth when you went to the ground. There was a warmth with the people, because it's all about the people. It's not about the steps. It's about the people who stood on them steps. Loads of people have contacted me and said, like, oh, I'm walking with my dad down Brunshaw Road, or I'm walking with so-and-so down road. They're not talking about the road. They're talking about the person they went with. And then pictures, they are individual pictures, but yet they reflect things that happened week by week, game by game, because like Matt said, you would go to the game with your parent, with your dad, or with your brother or somebody, and they happened again and again. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's being sort of received so well, is because the things that have been captured bring back really good memories. They take you back to them. We don't really, like I say, look at. I mean, people. One of my friends was in here last night, and he was looking at the picture of the empty alongside, and he were talking to me about walking up the back of it and walking away. They just bring back those good memories. So I think that's why they resonate so well with people.
Yeah, I think that's important. You know, I mean, obviously I'm a Burnley fan, and I remember those long side days and those and the be all days and the smells of the dodgy toilets and everything that went with it. But to see him in picture, it does take you back, and also I think it makes a good connection. Like I go on to the football with my daughter who only really knows the good times at Burnley, you know, and to show her those pictures of the long side or the season where we nearly went out of the league, it really is. It's really important, I think, to give them some heritage, and I think players should get that exposure as well. Actually, that they should go. This is where this club was, and um, I've had people like Roger Eli on who've talked about how a difficult time it was, but then how special it was. But Clive, just remind people of those years, how bad it was.
Um, how bad was it? I don't know how bad it was because we don't. I mean, my first sort of few games, yeah, we were really struggling to score goals, and we were looking at sort of like 88, but sort of 89, 90, sort of Frank Casper started to turn it round. 1991 was when I came out of college, and Joyce Pickles, she was a commercial manager. She rang me up and said, "Do you want to come down and be the club photographer? You know, we've not got a lot of money." But you can make your money if you want by selling your pictures. So that's how we agreed it. And Frank has sort of put this team together, and it was almost there because I don't know if you remember, we got to the playoffs and Torquay beat us in the playoff semi-final, but we were on that road to recovery at that point, and it was, yeah, we didn't quite do it, and there was some games where it wasn't sort of flamboyant football, but yet it was still good. It was like I said before, it was the people that go. The stewards were always in the same place, and like I think I've said this before. Some of them stewards and some of them lads that I met down there and travelled with, I'm still friends with today. There's young lads in the book that I'm still friends with. One of the lads who's walking across the pitch at Stafford Rangers with a police officer and a St John's ambulance guy. He's walking across. His son works with my son now. So them connections are still relevant 35 years on. So yeah, I've kind of lost a bit of thread there, Alex.
Well, I think it's important to make the connections sometimes before the success. How did the sleeping giant get nudged? And how did it kind of get brought to life? And then obviously that following year. I'm presuming I've not seen the book, but I'm presuming there's some pictures of that night in York. Is there?
There isn't from York. I didn't go to York. I couldn't go to every game, and back then you didn't have to do every game.
No.
Like now, you couldn't imagine being club photographer and not doing every game. But the agreement that I had was just that we would always have enough for the program. My sort of time was coming to an end at that point, and my career was changing directions. But I did games like Northampton and Mansfield and Derby County away when the fog came down and the game was called off, and the fans stayed sort of singing for half an hour after the game, singing Jimmy Mullen's name. But I think, yeah, it started to come together when Jimmy took over. Frank had put the jigsaw pieces in place. And Jimmy sort of gelled it, and his team, it became his team, and that sort of attacking sort of football came, and they went on that amazing run. um, you know,
Mhm.
throughout the rest of the season. And it was just a fantastic season, that 91-92. Um, one of my biggest regrets was not being in York. You know,
I wasn't there either. I couldn't get the time off work. But Matt, I mean, the whole. I don't think it really matters sometimes which the club is because every club is special to the people who follow it. Before
Yeah.
we were recording, Clive and I were talking about Padiham, which is a non-league club. Would you think that's fair? And do you like to capture the whole kind of arc of football?
100%. I think just because you're hearing Clive talk there and you Alex, I think we often become we're sort of obsessed with perfection now within kind of so you have digital media where we have this idea that if it's not on Instagram that it didn't really happen, and that's not true. And even you can see sort of how this is reflected within things like football. It's like if your team aren't trying to play like Pep Guardiola's Man City and win 3-0, then it's not good enough. And it's like I like the idea that real football, and I think this is also sort of represented in the sort of zines. That real feeling is it's like nothing's perfect. It's kind of you want to show the kind of like the grit and the kind of glamour, and I think I personally am a massive fan of sort of the whole every level of football from playing at grassroots. I go and watch more non-league now than I'm a supporter of Tottenham Hotspur, unfortunately. But I go and watch non-league now because it's an easier way to spend time with other sort of like blokes that I get on with, that I socialise with. It's a much easier way to bring everyone together. So I think it's everyone, especially in kind of in the UK. I think there's so many different ways you can enjoy sort of football. You can go down the pub and watch it with your friends. You can get together with family, and you can go to different types of matches. And I think that's kind of most people that have a proper feel for football in our country, like really understand that. You're talking about non-league football there. Anyway, it's quite rich. I think there probably is a different types of supporters that maybe only come in at that sort of top level or only want to buy the club merchandise and go glory hunters or whatever. But generally speaking, I think the football community is very deep and very rich, and people get that.
Yeah. And in the photographs, Matt, as an expert, what differentiates kind of a run-of-the-mill photograph to one that you go, "Well, that's got to be in the book."
I think so. Working with Clive, because when I would look at his sort of this edit of pictures that he had from those seasons, and I mean, we're talking a couple of hundred pictures, and almost all of them are good enough to go in. So what you have to kind of work out is, what did that picture mean, or what's going on there? And obviously, the narrative, it needs to sort of tell a story. You need to make sure we have different aspects of the grounding. Clive will have his favourite pictures. There'll be pictures that perhaps I'll be thinking, I'm not sure that one makes sense for it to go in. So it's a collaborative effort, and you sort of work together. I think when you're working with a photographer like Clive, who, like I say, is a professional photographer, you have that level of all of the images being of a certain standard. Other kind of say your amateur photographers, they might have 100 pictures, two of which are brilliant, but you need that sort of yeah, it needs to be able to tell a nice, clear story. And there's plenty of photos, aren't there, Clive, that didn't make the cut, but you have to kind of somehow bring it together, and make it work.
Yeah. Was there any disagreement? Was any that Clive went, you know what, that's got to be in, and you're going, actually, do you know what?
No, I think I'm probably a bit more diplomatic than
Yeah,
that.
right,
And
okay.
I think that's one of the reasons it's worked so well, Alex. Because when Alex Matt won't say this, but when he phoned me, um, he spoke to me for about 5 minutes, and I knew straight away that I would do the project because the way that he cared about the pictures, the way that he was going to allow me to have some sort of editorial control, which I didn't expect, and the way he put it together, it took him quite a few weeks to do it. And I was thinking like, maybe he's lost interest in this. Maybe he doesn't think it's going to work. But it was that finding the right pictures to put together in the right order that
Mm.
took the time. We changed a few, didn't we, Matt? We
Yeah, we
did.
swapped it around a few times, and again, I'd say here, Alex, that credit to Clive because for me, the Lower Block being this kind of like passion project, there are a few projects that I've walked away from, or I've had people try and dictate how they want it to be. And for me, that's yeah, look, you don't want to work with people like that, and you get a feeling from some people, and I certainly got a feeling from Clive, and I've had it with obviously many others that I've worked with, and you just think to yourself like, this is going to be an enjoyable process, and that's what it's supposed to be about, you know. So that's credit to Clive, but I think I'm long enough in the tooth to know, and so will Clive, that you know I've worked with a lot of editors before that are a pain in the arse to work with, excuse me the language, and
That's all right.
we don't have to do it like that, so we can be cool and sort
Yeah,
it out.
I do get that. I've been very fortunate to be a published author, and that relationship between, well, not just the publisher, but the author, but the marketing and and then the finance and all those kind of things. So let's just move on to that, Matt. How do you, because we are talking about kind of maybe a niche project here because Burnley aren't Barcelona and they're not Liverpool. How do you then turn your attentions to marketing a project like this?
Yeah. Each project is like that's again like an enjoyable part of it. It's like, right, how do we now get this out there? And because of the tribal nature of football, every project brings with it this new challenge, if you like, of how do we reach these fans. I've kind of become aware that like the real fans, the fans that are kind of gonna buy something like this, they're kind of in those places like the fan forums or listening to the kind of the club related podcasts. They're in the pubs outside the ground. And again, when I'm this is like I say kind of Clive, it all kind of coming together quite well with Clive, is Clive was really well positioned to be connected to all of these things. He's a Burnley fan himself, but a respected Burnley fan, and within these kind of had these connections. So this has been one of the easiest projects, and to produce. And I don't like to sort of make it about the kind of how many can we sell, like blah blah blah. You want to enjoy all of that. But
Mm.
like I said, that kind of, if I go into a Burnley forum and I say, oh, it's Matt here from Lower Block, I've just made this zine, they're probably going to delete the post or say, get out of here. This is for Burnley fans only. And rightly so. Clive can go in there and sort of and can post, and people will be supportive of that project. So yeah, that's the same with everything I do, and sometimes it's a much harder graft, as you can imagine. But in this case with Clive's been brilliant, very well connected, and really, like I say, that helps them because it allows like his pictures to do the rest of the talking once they're out there, and it has been so well received. So by the people of Burnley, fans of Burnley Football Club. So
I think
brilliant.
that's what we want to. I would like to say is I've been overwhelmed by how well it's been received. Just never saw that coming. It's just brought so many people. It seems to have brought people together. It certainly brought me together with a lot of people, and talking about them days. I've spoken to quite a few of the players about it again since it's been out, and it's opened up new doors for me. I've spoken to other photographers who are not just in this area, and it's that sense of community is bigger than perhaps sometimes we sort of we realise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I sit in the James Hargreaves lower, and same faces year after year after year, and that sense of community is really really special. Now, as we're recording this, we're just over a week away from Christmas Day, and is there still time to get this book, Matt?
Yeah, definitely still time. Obviously, like Royal Mail postage allowing, so don't order it on the 24th. But yeah, there's still a few copies, and get your orders in before it's too late. That's what I'd say.
So what's the best way to do that, Matt?
So just go to the website, which is lardblock.com. There's a shop section, but you'll see, Clive's Burnley edition sort of quite well promoted on the homepage, and hopefully that's quite a simple transaction for people to follow.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've not really touched on God, but we don't always have to. But I do think there's something very spiritual about football. It is my other church, let's put it that way. And I've talking about Spurs. I grew up as not many Burnley fans know this, but I grew up as a Spurs fan because I was born in London. So you have my sympathies at the moment. As I,
When you mentioned God there, I thought you were talking about Glenn Hoddle.
oh well, Glenn Hoddle, don't. Oh, well, I could talk. Glenn Hoddle is my favourite player ever. Period. I just have to say that
Yeah, yeah, great
he
player, great player.
was the most gifted. He could put the ball on a sixpence, and how he didn't get more caps for England, I'll never know.
Never know.
My favourite Burnley player, just for the record, Clive, I'll get yours in a second, is Robbie Blake because he was just a talented guy. Clive, what about you? Favourite players at Burnley?
It's either going to be Roger Eli or John Deere. Because I can remember when them two came, just how that change, how they changed the team. You know, John Deere with his hard tackling and the drive that he brought to the midfield, and just Roger with his determination. Everything about Roger was enthusiastic and determined, and you know, he never gave up, did he? Never gave up.
No.
Never gave up. And you know, them two, when them two joined, I think I remember when they came, they started. That was like they were the moments for me. But they were, yeah. When I was a child, it would have been Brian Flynn and Peter Noble, but that's another story, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, for Burnley fans listening to this, there are, Roger Eli's been on the Godcast, as have more recently Martin Dobson, Phil Kavanagh, lots of Graham Branch, loads of, there's a full squad of Burnley players who've been on the Godcast. I do checking out, but yeah, well, it sounds a great project. People go check it out. I'm really grateful for your time, Matt.
Alex,
To you, Clive.
We'll make sure I'll get you a copy over. I'll bring you a copy over.
That'd be lovely. Yeah. Well, I'm very happy to pay for it.
No. I'm sorry that I didn't get it to you before. I've no excuse. You're only 10 minutes away.
Well, we bumped into each other at a Milltime Brothers concert, didn't we? So, but yeah.
Thanks for having us on, mate.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having us,
Thank you
Alex.
both.
Appreciate it.
All right, and happy Christmas to you both. God bless you.
Merry
Bye-bye.
Christmas.
All the best.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.